All right, we're live again.
It's time for another live hangout on Patreon.
Yeah.
Today's topic is whole foods versus refined foods. So, what's the difference between a whole mango and refined sugar? And are there benefits to eating a whole mango instead of refined sugar? Or are there even benefits of eating refined sugar as opposed to a whole mango? What about things like oil? What about things like protein powder? Processed foods in general versus whole food, nutritional composition, all that stuff. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're live on for our patrons. And if you're watching this recording on YouTube, in a few weeks, then you can know that this goes live every month for our Patreon supporters. You can go to patreon.com/sweetnaturalliving. There's a link in the description where you can join us and get like exclusive content every month.
Yeah.
But for now, let's relax a little bit, allow people to join us, hopefully, and then we'll get into the topic soon. If anyone's watching, then say hello in the chat. Jenny Kanelhjärta is in the house. Hi guys. Hi. And she always has those cool emoticons. Original emoticons, like she makes them.
Do you understand that one?
Yeah, it's like a little Pikachu kind of thing with something hanging on
with a drop.
With a drop.
Yeah.
Maybe. Diane is also with us. Hi Diane, thanks for joining. Interesting topic. Yes, it is an interesting topic, I think, definitely. It's a piece.
A piece?
What does that mean? Oh, like that.
Oh, that.
It's doing like hey. Like
oh yeah, that could also work.
Very Asian.
Jenny Marie is also possibly with us. She's doing a race.
Yeah. And she's registering now. She's doing a relay tomorrow. She's doing 3 races over 3 days.
Yeah.
She likes to race.
Today we you were in Vollen, our hometown, and a big 100-year-old boat was taken into the harbor.
It was a huge like a historical event today in our local town, because like I don't know if it's 100 years, I think it's like 85 years.
No, 101.
Okay. 100 years ago there was this boat. It went to the North Pole, and it's called Maud. I'll just write it here in the chat. Maud. If anyone wants to look it up, they can search for Maud Returns Home, and that's the project. And it's not only a famous Norwegian explorer, Roald Amundsen, but he's actually world famous because I think he's the North Pole, the North Pole explorer. Like the polar history of the world. That's his story, basically, partly.
Yeah. Probably.
So it's a huge, and then basically that boat sank, and it's been under water for like 85 years, and today it came back into the bay here in Vollen, Norway. So it's been really cool. 3,000 people. I was saying hi to a lot of familiar people, and it was just a really nice event.
And I was exercising.
I was resting my legs. I've had a hard training week, and tomorrow I have a 20k long run, and my legs are a little sore, and I need to rest up for tomorrow, and now I'm going to do that. Anyway, should we start getting into the topic?
Yes. Let's. I'm just going to dust off some of the protein powder that's gotten under my watch, because I was just handling the protein powder.
Yeah, we put the protein powder into like a big, huge jar. It's just a little easier than those bags that it comes in. But let's go through first of all. What is the definition of whole food, and what is the definition of refined foods? Well, whole food is basically anything that comes from nature without being in any way handled by humans, I guess we could say.
Okay.
Right? I mean, there are things like, what about honey? Honey is basically the bees creating refined sugar, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's like in the gray zone. But generally speaking, we're talking about whole foods. We're talking about fruits, vegetables. I mean, technically, even animals and stuff, like if you're eating meat. But
you could also argue that grains and stuff is whole, which I kind of feel like they are.
Definitely.
But you would have to cook them, obviously.
Yeah, you know, that's like this really strict definition of whole food. It's technically just raw food, like fruit, right? Because as soon as you have to cook something, you're refining it.
Yeah.
You are processing it, and you're losing some of the nutrients, etc. You're refining it. And certainly even grains, a lot of grains like rice, for example, is already refined a little bit before you cook it even.
Yeah.
Because the hull and the husk is removed. So white rice already, you're talking about a refined food.
But for the sake of just simplicity, whole foods is generally what you know to be whole foods.
Yeah, basically you know what it is. You can see this is a potato, this is a banana. Whole food. Mm-hmm. Refined foods is anything that is processed to extract either just a part of the food, like for example, refined sugar is produced by beets or sugar cane, and there's a lot of different nutrients in there, and there's a lot of different constituents of that food, but you take the sugar, just the carbohydrate, and you're left with refined sugar. So that's when you're just taking one element of the food. But refined food is also simply removing unnecessary things like white rice, where you remove the husk, or maybe I don't know any other examples, which is just like not a perfect refining process, but just like removing something. Juicing would be refining a food, right? You're removing fiber, and so you're not really just getting a single nutrient like refined sugar. You're getting a lot of different nutrients out of it, but you're removing some nutrients. So you're either removing something, or you're removing everything except one thing.
Yeah.
That's essentially what refining is. Jenny says, would you say the sugar crystals in dates are refined? Well, that's a good question. I would say, in a sense, I mean, nutritionally speaking, yeah. I mean, it's just pure sugar, but it's not refined as such.
The dates themselves refine their own sugar.
Yeah.
But I guess technically, since you're eating the whole date, it's just part of the whole. It's just gone to a different place on the date. So
that's gone through a chemical process, basically.
Yeah.
But as you can see already, this discussion, it's not really that easy to define it perfectly. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of gray areas, and depending on how you define it. But so that's the definition. Now, what should we start with? Benefits of whole food.
Yeah.
Let's wait with the benefits of refined foods, because there are benefits of refined foods too. Mm-hmm. Let's before we define the benefits of whole food, I want to define empty calories, maybe, what that is.
Okay.
Should we do that first or after?
I don't know why, but okay.
Yeah. Well, you got to realize that there's two ends of the spectrum. In one end, you have empty calories. And in the other end, you have empty nutrients. Right? Essentially, what I'm saying is, empty calories are foods that have all the calories, either in the form of carbohydrate, protein, or fat. We're essentially talking about refined sugar, oil, and protein powder.
Mm. Although, strictly speaking, there's no real protein powders that's only protein.
Right.
It's almost impossible, but...
That's true. But generally speaking, empty calories in one end. And then the other end, you have empty nutrients, we could say, which means basically supplements.
Yeah.
Where you're getting a specific nutrient or a specific set of nutrients, but there are no calories. Mm-hmm. So you could actually just say macronutrients versus micronutrients. Like, it's possible to get micronutrients like iron, selenium, zinc without actually getting any calories in the form of supplements. And then in the other end of the spectrum, it's possible to get all the calories, all the fat and all the carbohydrates, protein, whatever, without getting any of the micronutrients.
Mm-hmm.
In a whole food, and that, this can bring us to the whole food discussion. In a whole food, all the different nutrients, macronutrients and micronutrients, all the protein, all the fat, all the omega-3 fatty acids, all the types of carbohydrates, the fiber, the minerals, the vitamins, the antioxidants, the enzymes, all that stuff is in there in a perfect package. Or not necessarily a perfect package, but it's in there in a package. And that is a whole food.
Mm-hmm.
And what are the benefits of eating a whole food diet?
Well, in most cases, in 99% of the cases, in the fruit and vegetable world, I would say it's balanced. There's a good balance of micronutrients and also macronutrients. It's gonna be very difficult to overeat on specific nutrients, as is the case with certain refined foods. I mean, if you're taking a whole bottle of iron supplements, you're gonna be in trouble. But
you
can
wouldn't get
eat
that
as much,
anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you
not
want
gonna be a problem.
That's not going to happen in nature, and also considering the fact that animals evolve with their ideal diet, right? With their species-specific diet. So we've evolved over time as frugivores in the tropical jungles for millions of years. We've evolved a relationship with our food, which is mostly tropical fruits, and so they are also reflecting our nutritional needs.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're eating a whole food diet, in the strictest sense, which means a raw fruit-based diet, we're getting the nutrients in the perfect ratio, the way nature intended, you could say. And there are also nutrients probably that we don't know about, and there are interactions between nutrients that we don't know about, certainly.
Mm.
And these things are not really possible necessarily, or it is possible probably, but we probably haven't figured it out yet, human beings, science, so that when you're not consuming whole foods, when you're trying to micromanage your diet and add in nutrients and supplements and make the nutritional profile yourself by including different foods, you're sort of risking missing out on some of those important ratios and nutrients that are in whole food.
Mm.
So certainly the greatest benefit of eating a whole food diet in the true sense of the word is that it is the only thing that is truly optimal.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But there are possible benefits to refined foods as well, both supplements and empty calories, and we'll get into that soon. Feel free, of course, to ask any questions or any comments if you have any ideas, or thoughts about this topic. I wanted also to say that what I just explained was basically the ideal whole food diet, like just raw foods, right? But there's a big movement today which is known as the whole foods diet, right? Yeah. There's even a big shop or a supermarket thing in the United States, right, which is called Whole Foods,
mm-hmm.
Whole Foods Market, where they sell whole foods supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the whole food plant-based diet. That's a word we hear a lot. And so, what is that? We'll talk about that. But first, Jenny Marie says she's back. Good. And Jenny Kalnienota says, for the past 2 years, I've been keeping away from oils, but been inspired by you guys and incorporated it into my diet. Good. Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that. The benefits of oil. Outrageous. Glad you're with us, Jenny Marie. So let's define that the more common use of the word whole food, plant-based diet.
Mm.
We're then moving away from raw foods, right? Because as we said, the strict definition of the word whole food is raw. When you're cooking something, you're refining it. But in the more broader sense, as we said earlier, it's just a matter of that's the food. It's in its whole form. It's not refined massively. And now I'm going to cook it. Rice, potatoes, vegetables of all kinds.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a beneficial diet to some degree. I mean, compared to a lot of other diets.
Yeah, to a high degree, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're thinking about the spectrum of diets that one could eat, eating a whole food plant-based diet, basically a vegan or mostly vegan diet with lots of unrefined foods. You go to the produce section of the store rather than around the aisles. You're just in the produce sections. You're buying potatoes, sweet potatoes. You're buying things, your beans, legumes, things that you can look at the food before you cook it and say, this is a bean.
Yeah, you're almost guaranteed to have a way better micronutrient profile than on a standard American diet, where you would get a lot of your calories from refined products such as sugar, oil, and
mostly those two,
which actually make up a large portion of people's diet.
Yeah.
Which can be problematic if those items isn't just a small part of your diet.
Exactly. I mean, that is one of the huge problems. There are two main problems with the standard diets of today, the standard Western diet, whatever. There's the problem of an excess of some particular nutrients, right? So people are eating animal foods, they're getting a lot of cholesterol, they're getting saturated fat in excess. They are getting too much iron. Even is a thing that can happen if you're eating a lot of meat. You can too much iron, etc. There are certain amino acids maybe which are in meat, and then there's milk and all the problems associated with milk and how people react to it immunologically. And so there are two. As I said, there's two problems. One of them being an excess of certain nutrients. But the other problem, and it's a major one with the standard Western diet, is what you just said. A total lack of nutrition. I mean, it's just like completely empty diet.
Yeah. Especially when you're looking at the older generation of people, where they have so low calorie expenditure, they're just sitting around all day and eating very small amounts of food. And of those foods they're eating, maybe 40% of their calories is coming from nothing but calories.
Yeah, just sugar,
yeah,
oil, and so specifically those two. Let's talk about them in a negative way first, and then we'll talk about why some of it might even be positive. But in a negative sense of the word, oil and sugar. The problems with sugar, we all hear about. Oh, sugar's bad, and of course we fruit-loving crazies, we think that's bullshit because we know we thrive on a high sugar diet, right, in form of fruit. The problem with sugar isn't really the sugar. It's when you're getting that sugar without any associated nutrients, right? And that's what refined sugar is. So you're getting your calories, you're sort of, it's supposed to be like this. For every calorie you eat, and there's a certain amount of calories in your food, for every calorie you consume in a day, there's a certain amount of iron with that 1 calorie or whatever. For every 1,000 calories of your diet, there's a certain amount of iron. There's a certain amount of calcium. There's a certain amount of omega-3. There's a certain amount of all these various valuable nutrients for each calorie. And if you're wasting calories, if you're suddenly eating lots of refined foods and you're getting, 800-900 calories a day coming just from refined sugar, that's what empty calories is. There's just it's empty. There's nothing there but calories in the form of carbohydrates. And although that carbohydrate pretty much acts the way carbohydrate does in your body anyway, it's not really a big deal. You're just missing out. That's the problem with sugar. You're missing out.
And there's an interesting situation where you can eat, let's say you're just eating dates, only, as opposed to just eating papayas. Only. Dates are much higher in sugar per. They have
per
a
gram.
higher per gram. So you're getting, if your diet only consists of dates, you're gonna get quite low amounts of micronutrients in some areas, as opposed to the papaya, which you're getting so much micronutrients per bite. So you end up with a better profile. And what's the difference? Well, the dates have more sugar in them. So theoretically, you could eat more papaya and also add the refined sugar and end up with a similar situation.
Yeah, or which would be maybe would be fine, right? Like if your diet is like tons of papaya and you're getting all those nutrients because it's fairly low in calories, so you have to eat a lot of papaya to get enough calories, and in that process you're also getting a lot of iron, a lot of calcium, a lot of all those other nutrients, and so you're good. And then if you're just adding in some sugar, it doesn't not matter as much. So again, it's that spectrum between empty calories and empty nutrients, and then where you fall along that scale, it depends on the calorie density of your foods as well. Jenny Marie says a lot of processed foods that are supposed to be healthy, protein bars, etc., overcompensate with certain vitamins to the point where it's very, very unbalanced. That's definitely a good point, because how much do we need of each nutrient? This is a difficult thing to manage. Some people are, and it's almost like every nutrient has its own fable. Is that the right word to use? Like a huge sort of magical story around how this particular nutrient is the best nutrient. Or you need this nutrient. This nutrient will solve all your problems. And then people market that, and there are certain protein bars, for example, which they have some extra nutrient X, which is gonna do this for you, and it's difficult to sort of navigate that world a little bit. The other empty nutrient that sort of makes people's diet very nutritionless is oil, right? Again, the same kind of like sugar. The same is kind of true with oil, that it's not really the oil that's bad. It's not really that the oil is just the same as you're getting from your fruit. It's just different fatty acids, but it's just nothing but those fatty acids, more or less. And that means if that forms a large part of your diet, again, you're just missing out. And how people pour oil on everything, and when you're people frying stuff, they put lots of oil, and then they have salad with lots of oil, and then they have a dressing with lots of oil. And then there's oil in almost all refined, like processed foods. When you buy packaged foods, there's just a ton of oil calories in there. Like, just look at the nutritional label on most foods, processed packaged foods. You'll see the amount of fat is usually very huge. Even though a lot of people think that ice cream, for example, or let's say ice cream, it's carbs, or chocolate, it's carbs, all those carbs are so bad. But ice cream is mostly fat. Look at the calories there.
Or even chips.
Potato chips.
It's potato, but it's fried in oil, so most of the calories is actually from oil.
Exactly. So these empty foods, these nutritionalist foods, they are a problem if they form a significant part of your diet. But if you have some drops of oil, that's not going to really matter, right? If you're otherwise eating a diet rich in whole plant foods and you're active, that's another interesting point here, is that you need to be fairly active in your life in order to drive that calorie intake a little bit up, because a higher calorie intake means you're getting more food into your system. More food into your system means you're getting more of all the nutrients, and you're more likely to cover your bases.
In fact, it's very important to have a high active lifestyle, because we are probably meant to thrive on being active, which means our intake of nutrients probably matches that to some degree.
Yeah, we're designed to be active. So at a certain point, I'm thinking that point is probably around somewhere between 2,500 and 3,500 calories per day. I would.
What do you mean?
Is that the natural activity level, calorie consumption that we're adapted to having could be somewhere around there. But then again, the calorie density of the food again matters, because if you're eating papayas, if you're just eating papayas, you'll eat a huge amount of food, and you'll be getting a lot of different nutrients. Whereas if you're eating dates, you won't be getting that many nutrients. So it is important. So in a sense, you could say low calorie foods like vegetables. This is one of the benefits of vegetables, I guess, is that you can eat a lot of them, and that means you're getting a lot of there's a lot of nutrients per calorie. That's essentially what it boils down to. Nutrients per calorie. And that's always what you want to look for if you want to analyze a food compared to another food. You don't want to look at absolute nutrients in this food. Like, you don't want to look at...
Or per serving.
Per serving, right? Everyone looks at per serving, per gram. If you look at 100 grams of papaya versus 100 grams of beef, you know, people will laugh at the papaya because it's like 90% water. They will say it's nutritionless. But if you look at 100 calories of papaya versus 100 calories of beef, for example, now the iron content is more accurate, because you're not actually eating according to volume or weight. You're eating according to calories. Even if you fill up your stomach with some low calorie foods, you're still hungry if you're not calorically satisfied. So, anything interesting happening in the chat? Jenny Canelata asks Jenny Marie how many calories she's eating on a day as a runner. That's interesting.
Actually, she's asking how much calcs.
Calcs. How many calcs?
She probably doesn't eat too many calculators, but maybe a few.
And Jenny asks, I really want to get more meticulous with my food calculation, but around 1,800 a day. So, now... Okay, we've talked about what whole food is and why it's beneficial, because it's just a lot of nutrients per calorie. It's what they call nutrient dense. And now let's look at the other side of the coin a little bit, because there are benefits to empty calories, or to refined foods rather. Should we talk about the foods first or the supplements first, maybe?
Let's do the foods first, considering we are talking about sugar and oil. For the sugar part, I would only really see one or two possible upsides. One is basically when you are out running.
And I want to talk about that. So talk about the other one first.
The second one, if I can remember it. I have forgotten. Talk about running and maybe...
No, you'll remember it.
No?
Maybe increasing the calorie density, or...
Yeah, no, just go.
Yeah, well, one of the benefits, you know, is to use sugar as fuel, because when I'm out running, nowadays I'm experimenting with making my own sort of sports drink, I guess. Or it's not a drink, it's actually more like a gel. I use maltodextrin, which is like a glucose polymer, so it's essentially just sugar molecules bound together. And remember, starch is also that, sugar molecules bound together in really long chains. And that's also glycogen, which is what we have in our muscles. And then if it's just glucose by itself, then it's called a simple sugar. If it's fructose, simple sugar. Sucrose is glucose and fructose. And maltodextrin is a short chain of glucose. Anyway, maltodextrin and some fructose. That's basically what I mix together in a certain ratio as a gel. I put a little water in there, and I have a little squeezy bottle that I bring with me on runs. And so I'll just squeeze that into my mouth every 10 or 20 minutes, wash it down with some water from another bottle, and that's my fuel. And the benefit of that is, well, first of all, it's very convenient, right? I can have my calories in there. I can calculate exactly how many grams of sugar I need per hour. And this is very closely related to performance. You know, there's a lot of studies and science pointing towards very particular ways of consuming sugar during racing and training to optimize performance. It's crucial, actually. Like you will literally, like a marathon, for example, at the elite level, is won or lost partly based on their nutrition strategy. So like if one person takes in not enough grams of carbohydrate during that race and another person does, the person who does will win.
And I just want to say that is this natural? No, it's not. Could it happen in nature? No, not to this degree. But is it unhealthy? Probably not.
Probably not.
It makes sense when we're looking at the science of it that it is fine, but it is purely for performance reasons. Optimizing performance in...
Well, essentially, essentially what you're doing is when you're consuming fruit, let's say a mango, you're getting sugar, right? So there's nothing, wrong with consuming sugar in that sense. But you're getting it with the fiber and with the associated nutrients. The fiber slows down the uptake into the bloodstream a little bit, and it also negates some of the insulin spike that might result. Here's the thing though, when you're exercising, there's almost no insulin reaction. Like, insulin is very blunted during exercise, so even if you consume a large amount of sugar, you're not going to get an insulin spike. And you want that sugar to go into your bloodstream fast because you're burning it fast, and it's not the same as when you're at rest. And so all of those bad things that happen when you consume refined sugar by itself at rest, which is you're getting a large insulin spike, you're getting that blood sugar rising very quickly and it might fall very quickly, all that stuff, that doesn't happen when you're consuming it while exercising. Mm-hmm. And in fact, one of the biggest problems of exercise, or runners have, or cyclists as well, is getting the sugar into the bloodstream at a fast enough rate, because one of the huge challenges of that is gastric emptying, like getting it out of the stomach and getting it absorbed in the intestine. And fiber slows down that absorption, which makes it more difficult because it stays in your stomach for longer. Same does protein and fat content does the same thing. So if you're eating whole foods, you're getting more food in your stomach. Is going to empty slower, and then you're going to have a hard time drinking enough because it's going to start pooling in your stomach, and you're going to get bloating and etc.
This is a bit
too specific. Let's wrap up the exercise thing. The point here is that by consuming refined sugar and refined salt, even when you're exercising, you're better able to control the exact amounts of sugar that you're getting in, and then regulate that depending on your performance, and you won't have as many digestive issues. And I know even Michael Arnstein, which is like a hardcore fruitarian, right? He talked also about during races, he would use gels, because eating too many dates, it would just be too much fiber, be difficult for the stomach, and he would also have to go poop several times during an ultra race, which is not ideal if you're trying to win. Yeah. So, and just to wrap it up, because this is an important point at the end here, what you mentioned, if you're otherwise eating a healthy diet, if you're otherwise consuming whole foods, getting lots of all the nutrients you need, it doesn't matter if 300 calories for the day, on a 4,000 calorie day, if you have 300-400 calories of that, less than 10% coming from empty calories, you're not missing out on that much nutrition.
Which brings us to the point that I said earlier, that it could have been looked exactly the same if you had just eaten dates for lunch instead of papayas for lunch.
Yeah, people hate on you ate refined sugar, but exactly, they will happily eat dates, which will do pretty much the same thing for your nutritional situation. Let's take a look at the comments. Jenny Kanerata says, gel is such a scary texture to eat. Makes me think of Japanese natto. Oh, natto is nice. I like natto. I tried it a few times, and it's pretty cool. I haven't tried proper natto though, just those packages. But I would like to try a really, a snot natto type thing. Anyway, but I like the gels. I mean, I haven't tried commercial gels. I just try that gel I make myself, and I really like it. I love it, actually.
Jenny Marie agrees that sugar is really important when racing. You can feel even the most subtle differences when you change your intake.
Our dad, I just convinced my dad to get one of those bottles as well, and I've made him a mix that he can drink during runs, and he ran 20 minutes faster on his last run than he did on the previous one, just because he had sugar with him. So it gives you more stamina because you're not using up your liver glycogen, and your blood sugar remains stable throughout.
Matt Willis, hello, says, what do you think of when people say they feel tired after a high carb meal, i.e. pasta?
No.
Yeah, I think that depends on two factors. Well, possibly just one, but let's do the other one first. Possibly a huge meal that really stretches your stomach can put a lot of blood into your stomach, and you can feel drained and tired because it takes a lot of digesting to do it. maybe even with salads, like heavily.
Maybe just your blood flow goes there essentially to start digesting. It sort of takes a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm. The other thing is there's a marked difference between simple carbohydrates versus complex carbohydrates, i.e. bananas versus oatmeal. Oatmeal or starch in general will take a lot more digestion out of you.
Yeah.
It will take
For example, you have to produce more digestive enzymes to break down the starch. So your pancreas has to work harder, etc.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point. And I'll add to that there's also the possible aspect there might be like lectins and things like that. Certain lectins, maybe even gluten for some people, can create these powerful immune reactions after eating it. And we've actually both experienced something like that a few times. We haven't pinpointed exactly what it is, but sometimes, like if I eat a huge meal of rice, I notice sometimes I get really sleepy afterwards. I don't exactly know why. Is it maybe it's the lectins?
I heard about it on the podcast today, actually.
Okay, we'll talk about that afterwards. And then
it was just that.
Yeah, me and you will talk about it. And then also quickly to mention that if you're getting a sugar insulin spike, then you can get a drop in blood sugar afterwards. But that's typically for people who eat high fat diets, because they have low insulin sensitivity. But if you're eating a high carbohydrate diet, you're usually tackling your sugar better. Diane Legan, I question if having refined sugar that way is healthy. Yet I know you love running, and I think physical and emotional benefits of the running may minimize the less healthy aspect of sugar. Well, yeah, that's good that you're questioning it. We should always question things. But I've thought a lot about it, and I cannot find a reason for why it would be unhealthy. Like, it literally is the same. Like, yeah, as I said, I guess I went through some of those aspects earlier, but I cannot see an aspect of that which is directly unhealthy.
Yeah, I guess it depends on if you're doing the refined sugar on an empty stomach while inactive. That almost certainly will have some issues.
That will give you a blood sugar spike, etc. So
but that's while out running, it's more complex, perhaps. But if you're adding refined sugar to a larger meal with a lot of fiber and or water, it's pretty unlikely that it's going to be affecting your blood sugar in a bad way, even while sitting still.
But who knows? I mean, who knows? You might be right, and maybe you just have like a gut feeling that it's something wrong with it, and it might be, or it might not. Who knows? She says, I get concerned over time it might impact your blood sugar, and I agree that days have a similar effect. Well, that I don't see how it would affect my blood sugar, though, because as I said, when you're exercising, you have a blunted insulin response, so your blood sugar wouldn't really go high like that. It would just be more like steady, and it's also a matter of consuming it at the same rate as your liver produces glucose into your bloodstream, because your liver, just to quickly answer that question, your liver will produce about 1 gram of glucose and put it into your bloodstream every minute during exercise to maintain your blood sugar, and that comes from your liver glycogen. And if you consume 1 gram of not 1 gram every minute, but if you consume 60 grams of glucose per hour, 1 gram a minute, you will literally just suppress the liver's production of glucose, and the glucose will be maintained by consuming glucose instead of the liver precipitating it.
Yeah, at that rate.
So
it can't go any faster.
Exactly. So the point here is that your blood sugar, it doesn't matter it shouldn't matter. Maybe it does, but it shouldn't matter. Theoretically, it doesn't matter whether that glucose comes from your food or whether that glucose comes from your liver. We know one thing, though. If it comes from your liver, you got about 100 minutes of hard intensity exercise until your liver glycogen stores are empty, and you're done. Definitely done. Like, there's no way you can continue. So if you are exercising for longer than that at a high intensity, you simply must consume sugar. And if you're consuming that in the form of fruit instead, because it's healthier, well, then you're going to have a problem getting it into your bloodstream and at the rate you need to preserve liver glycogen. Anyway, more questions, more stuff here. My favorite race shot is a squeeze packet of pure maple syrup. Jenny Marie, that sounds nice. And Diane says she, of course, understands it might help performance, but of course, as you mentioned, just because it helps performance doesn't necessarily mean that it's healthy. Who knows?
Yeah. Matt Willis asks, is it even a problem to have blood sugar spike from a high GI food? Well, I mean, it feels kind of terrible. The few times I have had blood sugar spikes, like feeling it feels absolutely terrible
to have high blood sugar.
Yeah, and it always leaves me with a down afterwards. So I guess that's a problem. It has to be a problem.
Yeah, and of course you are typically also ending up with a blood sugar plummet. Like it usually plummets afterwards, because it's really you. There's a lot of sugar into the blood, and then there's a lot of insulin released, and then all that insulin then brings the sugar down too low afterwards. So you get this typical blood sugar roller coaster thing, and which is definitely, I would say, unhealthy. It's not good. But as I said again, that's not what happens when you're exercising. You're not getting that blood sugar spike.
So that was a lot of sugar.
Yeah, but I think that this is one of the important benefits of refined foods. So let's talk about
oil. Next.
Yeah. Well, just to wrap up the sugar thing, because you had something else you want to say. You just don't remember it.
No,
but I want to say the other potential benefit to refined sugar would be, I don't know if this is a benefit, but I was just going to say, bringing your carbohydrate intake up. And if it's just a small part of your diet, then it's not a benefit. It would just be better to eat whole, like bananas, I guess. Yeah. So I can only really see it during exercise as a potential benefit.
Oil. That's kind of newish territory for us, really.
Yeah.
We were not eating any oil, or rather not any overt fats, for many years, until about 1.5 years ago or so. You've always been a slightly higher fat than me.
I've been eating like an avocado a day, for years. I used to do that.
And I've been at like 3% fat. I changed my opinion based on a lot of experimentation on my own body. It's detailed, but the point is, from science and studies, I would say I've changed my opinion that it's likely that we're going to need higher fat than what I initially thought.
Yeah, and bear in mind here also that if you're eating tropical fruits,
combined with a fairly high calorie need,
you are getting a fair amount of fat from that fruit. Tropical fruits has more fat than temperate fruits. And bananas are also very low in fat, actually. Yeah. So if you're eating a lot of bananas and not a lot of mangoes and papayas, etc., you're at like 3% fat. And if you ate a lot of jackfruit and papayas and mango, you would actually be at 6% fat. So already there, you're missing out on like 3% fat from what you would in a natural setting. And then, all of you guys probably know that we're playing with the idea, or our opinion leans towards thinking that termites might be a part of our optimal diet, which again then would mean we got more fat from eating those termites. And then, as you said, looking at studies, it just seems that the bulk of the scientific literature sort of points towards 3 to 5% of calories from fat as being too low for your hormones and various other reasons. So
how much though is up for debate. At this point, I'm eating around 55 grams of fat a day, which equals to almost 15% maybe 15% of my calories, I think.
Yeah, so let's throw it out there, somewhere between 8 and 15% of total calories coming from fat. Probably somewhere ideal, which is like 80-10-10 is more or less fairly on point in that sense. Genetic analysis says you don't go below 15%.
Which, if you have a lower calorie need,
you might need more fat.
Yeah, by percentage.
Yeah.
Because I think fat's role in the body is purely, it's twofold. It's for fuel, and arguably you could just get that fuel from other sources, like carbohydrates, preferably. And the other part is it has a function for making it's a precursor to hormones.
Yeah.
And then, possibly other other points as well.
And that's why it's an absolute amount needed.
Yeah.
Like you need a certain amount of grams to make those hormones.
Which is a really low amount, much lower than
but
you think.
That's sort of a different topic altogether, right? But basically this means that we looked at our diet and we were like, okay, we should probably get at least 10% of calories from fat. How would we do that? Well, I found avocados to be less than ideal. I made a video a while back. You can watch it if you haven't done so. It's on our channel. And Jenny says maybe it's individual, the exact number, and that might be true as well. Depends on your person and your activity level, etc. But so I didn't want to use avocados, and there's just this huge omega-6 content of the avocados, which messes up your omega-3 absorption, etc. So nuts and seeds are hard to digest, a lot of anti-nutrients, but maybe a little bit, yeah, sure.
I'm eating nuts.
He's eating nuts and seeds. And so basically we came to the conclusion that, okay, maybe the easiest way to sort of compensate for the lack of fat in bananas or whatever, let's take that as an example. Instead, mangoes 6% fat, bananas 3% fat. If we want to sort of mimic what a mango would give us, we would have to sort of just add a little fat to the banana. And the best way to do that would just be to add fat and nothing else. And that's the idea behind oil. Like by using olive oil, which is what we use, we're adding some fatty acids, we're adding some grams of fat to our diet and just bringing up that fat intake a little bit. And this is, well, we don't want to get lost into this discussion about the nutrition. We actually want to talk about refined foods versus whole foods. And to wrap up the oil discussion then, the point here is that sometimes you want to add a little bit of something very particular. Like you just want to increase your fat intake a little bit without adding a lot of other nutrients or eating a lot of foods that you otherwise maybe wouldn't eat just to get that one nutrient. People want iodine, and this is a similar situation. People, I need more iodine, so I'll start eating seaweeds, and it's just like maybe that's not really a natural thing for humans to eat seaweeds just to get our iodine that would otherwise be in the soil and therefore in the fruit we're eating. And now we're eating seaweeds and we're getting mercury and maybe other heavy metals. Better way to do it would just to be eating refined iodine, like just getting iodine and nothing else, because that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Or getting B12 and nothing else, not really messing with nutritional yeast, and maybe the B12 isn't really absorbed, or maybe it's not really true B12, might be an analog. You're much safer off just like getting a B12 supplement, which is a refined food. It's just B12 pretty much. You're safer that way, and that's kind of our idea with oil as well, that using oil as a supplement essentially. But we're talking small amounts. I mean, I'm using like 15 grams to 20 grams of oil per day. That's very little, and you're using a little bit more, I think. But
a little bit less.
A little less. Yeah, right. So basically we're not using a lot of oil. I mean, it's not like that's a huge part of our diet. It's just a supplement to get a few extra grams in. And the same goes for supplements, just to wrap that up as well. We do experiment with supplements these days, and for us it's just a matter of, the benefit of refined foods, right? It's like you want to sort of micromanage your diet. Well, the best way to do it would be to use refined foods to sort of put them together in the way you want, instead of dealing with a lot of whole foods where you're getting your nutrient that you're seeking, but you're getting a ton of other nutrients too, and they mess up the balance. But again, it's risky territory to deal with supplements, because who knows if you're taking this.
But you could argue that for the other point as well. You're like, oh, I'm too low on iodine, therefore I'll eat. I need to get iodine from my diet. You could eat seaweed, that would be in your diet, but there are certain seaweeds that are insanely high in iodine.
And you get too much.
Yeah, it is if you're already in a situation where you're like trying to supplement your diet with a specific nutrient, you need to have a really good reason for why you think you need to get more of that nutrient, and B, you should know exactly how much you need, and then supplementation with a supplement is, in many cases, not all, but in many cases, a good option. Yeah,
it's safer. You're more in control. So refined foods gives you a sort of amount of control of your food. You can control it better, rather than just like, I don't know, I need iodine. There's more iodine I think there's more iodine in tomatoes. I'll eat some tomatoes, and it's just like are you getting more iodine or are you not? Is it in there or is it not? You go months, and your thyroid level, work is still off the charts, for example, and it's just like you wasted like 6 months of health.
By the way, I heard on the radio yesterday that a third of the women in Norway are severely deficient in iodine.
No. Despite eating a lot of animal products, which is supposedly...
Yeah, iodine is important.
Yeah. So...
I just want to say that we both use protein powder, me to a larger degree.
Yeah, we need to cover that too.
Yeah. Quickly. I thought it's better to cover protein in a specific video.
I agree.
And just to say that we do eat protein powder and the reasons are complex and interesting.
Yeah. But of course, the refined food argument is still pretty much the same. Is that okay? We think we need a little bit more protein than what our current diet offers, rather than. Well, you could do this. This is one strategy, and I'm not going to get into why that might not be ideal. But you could eat lots of beans, right? But when you're eating lots of beans, you're also getting a lot of phytic acid, which might mess up your iron absorption, etc., etc., etc. So there's all these interactions. So rather than bringing a whole food into the picture, if you're actually just looking for protein, more protein, maybe you should just add protein, nothing else, or almost nothing else. And that's what a protein powder is. Mm-hmm. So refined foods, the benefits are it gives you control and you're able to sort of manipulate your diet very specifically and measure the effects. And but the downsides is that if they do form too large of a percentage of your diet, you will end up with a nutritionally poor diet, and then you have to make up for that with lots of supplements again, which doesn't really make sense. So the closer you can get to a whole food natural diet, the better. But then at the moment we're playing in that other realm a little bit, and it's very interesting. Jenny says she eats protein powder too, and Matt Willis says do you find that you eat less since adding fat? Less carbs or just less volume of food?
Well, there is a little bit less volume of food, of course, because carbohydrates usually come in the form of fruits and vegetables, and they are obviously more larger than oil and or nuts.
Fat is very calorie dense.
Mm-hmm. So I guess, yes, technically eating less volume, but only by a little bit.
Yeah. But we're all...
Not in terms of calories.
We're both very in control of our diet. I mean, we pretty much count calories just effortlessly almost and weigh our food, etc., because we're just super interested in what we're eating, how much of it we're eating, and we're planning it out. And as athletes, we need to plan out the correct amount of, calories post-workout, etc. We like to do it like that. So we are accounting for the fat in that calculation, you could say. Yeah. But we also go by hunger, so that, if we are hungry, even though we've theoretically eaten enough calories, we will certainly eat. And that's when we usually definitely always will go to the carbohydrates, the fruits, basically, dates or something like that, to top up on calories. Yeah. But it's such a small amount of fat in the grand scheme of things, though, that it's still a high carbohydrate diet. Mm-hmm. Jenny says, how come you choose pea protein? Well, we both eat mostly pea protein. Mads is in the middle of a sort of experimenting with some other ones, and I think
I'll probably make a video about it in the coming months.
Yeah, so
it's complex, but it's basically just that it's benign. Pea protein is a safe bet, and it's also one of the highest qualities.
Yeah. So he'll make a video about it at one point, and I think if Jenny Canedata has a question, like if she has a very specific question or something like that, maybe you could send us a message through Patreon. The message function.
I'll answer.
And then Mads will answer it in detail if you want to know more about it. But I think we're going to wrap it up there. And I want to say, if anyone watched this recording on YouTube and you've made it this far, you probably would like to join us in the live chat, like all the other guys, next time. And in that case, you should check out our Patreon page. There's a link in the description. And we got exclusive content there, Q&A videos, and live hangouts like this. So please go over there and do that. And to all you guys in the chat, Jenny Caneliata, Jenny Marie, Matt, and Diane, I think that was...
Possibly another one.
In the
5 concurrent viewers.
Yeah, we can see how many viewers are there, but that's fine. You don't have to say hi if you're there and you just want to chill out. That's totally cool as well. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And it was a really good one today.
Yeah.
Very interesting topic. Especially when I started talking about sugar. I mean, I'm so interested in performance nutrition right now. We're both in various ways. I mean, you're really protein interested right now. I'm really sugar interested because it sort of is essential for our respective sports at this point. And I could probably talk about gastric emptying and carbohydrate oxidation rates all day.
Yeah.
I do. And he has to basically endure all my talking about that. And I have to hear about him talking about protein. So
yes, Kanelata. We don't want me becoming a wreck because we're late for dinner.
That's a good point.
You know our schedule. And
Mads is about to. Mads usually starts making dinner 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And
5 minutes and 50 seconds actually.
And so we better wrap it up.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'm sure you did. And we'll see you in the next thing.
Yep.